take your heart away. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words. If I burn my tongue, I'm out of work, because I can't say the words I'm supposed to say. Preach the word. Be in season, out of season. And the word became flesh, dwelt among us, full of grace and truth. The word. They say there's only two kinds of sermons, really, when it comes down to it. A pat on the back and a whack in the head. Maybe a kick in the pants. I was raised in the conservative evangelical Mennonite church. We didn't talk to Lutherans because they watched Davy and Goliath. I'm sorry, John Mark. We weren't allowed. My dad was very, very strict. Good Mennonite guy. He had a belt with his name embossed on the back, said Herman. And many a Sunday, I and Herman would go down to the boiler room at church. And today, if I look in the mirror, I can read Herman right here. Man, guys, I had a kick in the pants ready for you this afternoon. This passage that Travis well executed, Myron demonstrated, cleanly slices into 3 even strips, and each strip takes a strip off us. 1 Thessalonians 5, 12, 24. Travis read it and exegeted it. It's simple. Be faithful. Be faithful to your leaders. Regard them very highly. Be faithful to the weak. Help the weak. Be faithful to the faith. Rejoice always, pray without ceasing. And with those 3, you, as a preacher, you can really lay it on. I won't point to anybody. I'll look at Lionel. My wife says, I only look her in the eye because everybody else feels guilty. But you, be faithful. Come on. Do better. Work harder. What did Myron say? Put your head down. Do it. Work harder. You, pray more. And lay burden upon burden, command upon command. And now, I think for some of us that appeals to us because we're worker bees. We know how to put our head down. I love to ride in the rain against the wind. There's something about riding in the rain. You can do this, or as we used to say, man up. Straighten your shoulders, ears, shoulders, heads, and heels, and hips. Stand tall. Obey, dig deeper, hold on tighter. And for some of you this afternoon, that works. For some of you have the inner strength and self-discipline to do just that. We can appeal to your willpower, and there's enough power in you to will it to happen. For some of you, this might work for maybe 72 hours. Remember going to summer camp? Loving Jesus, making the confession. Got back to school, didn't work quite as well. Our brothers here from Village of Hope, my brother was a dealer in our household. I learned about marijuana when I was about 12 because it was at our house and in his room. And when he was working at Bonanza in 1979, he had a Chevelle, a 442, and a Fiat Spider. And I thought, I'm going to work at Bonanza. He was dealing out of the back, got caught, and did 10 years federal time for what he possessed. It works, but we fall, like promises made at summer camp. But for some, it's nothing more than church guilt. Myron talked about it. More shame, more failure. Oh, great. You've got to be faithful. Just one more step on the I tried bus. I just can't wait to get off the I tried bus because I am tired. When people ask me how I'm doing, my answer is always, I'm weary but well. Welcome to being over 60, some of you. More law. Not by works of righteousness, which we have done. And my friends, you would hear the command to work harder for one more Pharisee standing on a platform presenting and pretending that he was a success at this. I loved how Myron started. Where's Myron? Where'd you go? What was the first thing you said?
I got nothing to say.
I got nothing to say, right? I love that, yeah. And then he talked for 45 minutes. It was fantastic. I'll join with him. I got nothing to say, but I pray Jesus will. One more, you heard it from a Pharisee, presenting himself as a success. And ever so slowly, that black oil of self-righteousness seeps into our hearts, and we say, I can do this. I can be the good Christian. The dragon's wings beat once more, and we say with all humility, look at me. I have been faithful to my boss. I haven't betrayed my wife. We're still married. I haven't betrayed my neighbor or my kids. And God, I thank you that I am not like the other people, the swindlers and crooked adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I am not faithless. And so we need to begin in the darkness before the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ can be presented to us in fullness. Each man stood here and said, humility. Myron said, brokenness. I love broken people because I am one. So I'll ask you to stop. Honestly, don't turn to your neighbor, but look into your own soul. Not the Satan's false accusation of shame, but the truth of the Spirit's conviction that, are you faithful? I'm not going to ask you to share that. I know my answer. Have I kept faith with my wife? I was at Comic-Con. I know that, I won't ask who's been to Comic-Con here. It's a pretty small crowd. I get it. I was at Comic-Con and I was following Catwoman. She had black latex on. I was following her and she looked, and I kept following her, and then I took 2 steps past and I realized it was a man dressed as Catwoman. It was one of the most sexually confusing moments of my life. But I'll admit, I followed her for a while. Where, when, and how? Where have I failed? The Greek said an unexamined life is not worth living. Finish the verse. All of us like sheep have gone astray. Each one of us has turned to his own way. And it's here with this truth that the command to be faithful, the call to be faithful, the evidence of the faithfulness of Christ, and of my brothers around the room, and I struggle. And I ask myself, do I actually need to be convinced by some guy in the pulpit who happens to have the mic and you don't? Do I need to convince you of your faithlessness? Is that my task? No, it's not. It is the work of the Spirit to convict us of sin, righteousness, and judgment. Somebody said, well, you're condemning that person to hell. And I said, like I could do that. That's God's job. Do we need to go back through the story of Israel, the faithless people, kings who fell away? Do we need to see Peter's great declaration of faithfulness only to fall away time and time again and be ruined? Do we need to remember that John was the only one who stood at the cross and it was the women who stayed faithful? Do we need to hear the warnings of Hebrews 3:12? Take care, brothers and sisters, that there not be in any one of you. He's talking to the church. An evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God. The admonition of 1 Corinthians 12, therefore let the one who thinks he stand watch out that he does not fall. The words of Revelation 14:12, here is the perseverance of the saints who keep commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. Do we need to be reminded of our faithlessness? The times we were unwilling to pay the price. And do we need to be reminded, I think maybe we do, of the consequences of faithlessness? I once asked my wife what she would do if I betrayed her, and she said, I'd forgive you, but our marriage would never be the same. I'm really glad she would forgive me, but I don't know what the same would look like. Consequence. I carried in my wallet for years a card called The Consequences of a Moral Failure. My brother wasn't a believer. And if I fell morally as the preacher, that meant him being right. And I couldn't stand it if my brother was right. Because he'd be right that I'm a heretic and a hypocrite. having to stand in front of the people I love at church, and I would struggle in those moments that we shared, look at that and remind myself of how far the fall was and how great the crash would be. The ruin that we have seen over the past few years. Myron alluded to it, but let me give you a few names and see if these don't sting. Robert Morris, Ravi Zacharias, Mike Bickle, Steve Lawson, Bill Hybels, Philip Yancey, Bruxy Cavey, Ted Haggart, and Jean Vanier. And the Catholic Church this year announced 6,400 priests who have been legally prosecuted, not mentioning all those that haven't. Reading those names is like reading the Vietnam War Memorial, but not of heroes, of failures. Amy Grant sang it and Jeremiah said it. Faithless heart, more deceitful than all. So I want to put to you this afternoon that if you're trusting in your own power to be faithful, I'm not like Israel. Let me sing for you. I'm not going to sing. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let that grace now, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, now take and seal it for the courts above. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. That's the song. See, only God is faithful. Let's go to your place. And let's go to your garage and find your golden calf. It's probably there. So we find ourselves at a crossroads this afternoon. The call to command to faithfulness, but the wrestling with our own nature. For I don't do the good I want to do, but the evil I don't want to do, this I keep on doing. Now, if I don't do what I want to do, it's no longer I who do it, but sin lives in me, and Travis can work out what that means, I'm not sure. So I find a law at work, a law. See, I don't want to place you under the law. I was visiting with a good Lutheran friend of mine, I was talking about law and grace and about this. He said, you're more Lutheran than I am. I said, yeah, probably, but that's okay, you know. Law and grace. I find this law. I don't want to do good, but the evil is in me. It is not my intent in this portion to just tear you down, but I want us to be honest with each other and an honest reflection again, not Satan's work of condemnation or shame, but of genuine reflection so that we can build Christ in broken men. So not to destroy, but I want to introduce you to a better way than your own willpower. I want to introduce you to the way of Jesus, the faithful one who lives in the faithless one. My wife was at work with a bunch of ladies, and they're very mystical and very new agey and stuff. I said, next time you tell them that the spirit of a first century Jewish carpenter lives inside you. She said, yeah, that'll throw them off a bit. Yeah. I have the spirit of a first century Jewish carpenter living inside me. Remember when you went to summer camp and you put the flashlight in your mouth and your eyes glowed? It's not quite like that, but my pneumatology maybe needs some work. But he lives in us. See, if we want to be faithful, we have to bind the faithless heart to the faithful one. We bind the faithless heart to the faithful one on the cross. If only God is faithful, and I will confess to you, I am not. And if we are called to be faithful, this paradox, then we must bind ourselves, our very lives, to the faithful one. So before we can even get to 1 Thessalonians and faithfulness, we have to go back to the cross. So welcome in the next little while. This is why preachers don't wear watches. Welcome to the cross-shaped way of life. Welcome to the way of Jesus. For the way of faithfulness will always be the way of the cross. So now we need to stop. Establishing our own nature, that's healthy. The unexamined life is not worth living. What is this cross-shaped way of Jesus? I'll start the verse. You finish it. I am crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live. Christ lives in me. And the life I now live, faith. who loved me and gave himself for me. The cross-shaped way. It's no longer Dan Esau who lives. When I was 18, I had drugs in the 70s. That was a whole different world. I had reached a point of death. And I was suicidal. One night I came home. My dad had heart surgery a couple months before, had all his medication, so I took all his pills. I took a big bottle of Tylenol, expecting to die. Woke up 3 days later in emerge or observation, and the first thought that came to my brain was, I can't even die right. You talk about being a failure. My parents were so ashamed they never told anybody. We never talked about it. We were Mennonites. We don't talk about these things. Dylan said, what is it? We've got a carpet that's so much stuff underneath it, it's got a, what was the line?
Said we're so good at sweeping things under the carpet, it's a mountain.
Yeah, it's got a name now, right? My brother came to see me, and he brought me a Mad magazine. That was the entire counsel I received when I was suicidal. I went to a psychologist one night, and he said, did you intend to kill yourself? I said, yes. He said, do you intend to do it again? I said, no. He said, good enough. And that was it. That was all the counsel I got. I skipped school. My parents put knives away. Dead. Finally, my parents said, you need to go to Calgary to visit a guy named Jerry. And I was out partying at his place one night, got home like 2 or 3 in the morning, I can't remember. And Jerry was waiting for me in his living room. And he said, so Dan, you've tried everything else, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, as we used to call it. He said, you willing to give Jesus a try? I said, well, I tried dying, and that sure didn't work. But let's try living. And that was the beginning. I am crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live. The crucified life is the life that follows Jesus into self-sacrificial love. What is love? Herein is love. That God gave his Son. Love is giving so that another might grow. A life of self-sacrificing love, of humility and obedience. It is to give so that others might live. Those of you who farm, give so that others might live. I've seen my brother-in-law love his cows and give them life. He gives his life so those little crazy cows may live. Man, that's life. It means that we see the Christian life as one that finds strength in our weakness. We love our enemies. We trust God through suffering rather than seeking power or comfort. Our daughter was born 2 months early. She had all kinds of medical conditions, health concerns that have affected her to this day. Her heart kept stopping. They gave her caffeine. I love it. If your heart stops, give her a shot of caffeine. That'll wake her up. And we were sitting at a friend's house, and our daughter is in this dire emergency strait. She was in intensive care for 6 weeks. And on the wall is Psalm 73. My heart and my flesh may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. We prayed that and prayed that. She's 33, stubborn as a mule, redheaded. I don't get it. Flesh fails, the heart doesn't. We are transformed through suffering, and we don't seek power in those moments. The crucified life is the life that is humble, self-giving as Jesus gave, who poured out his life for others. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. It calls for a shift from relying on my own strength to trusting in the strength of Christ who dwells in me, even when it leads to suffering and persecution. It means surrendering to Jesus and realigning our lives and our values, our expectations to match the often and increasingly countercultural way of Jesus. It means living as a community, the church, the ecclesia, the assembled, the gathered, and I love the church. It means living as a church that functions differently than the surrounding world. We are not the Legion. We are not the Elks. We are not the Lions Club. We are the bride. It means being those who live as quiet people, as they used to call Mennonites, the quiet of the land, acting with grace and truth. For if we have become united with him in the likeness of his death, certainly we shall also be in the likeness of his resurrection. Knowing this, that our old self was crucified with him, in order that our body of sin might be done away with, so that we would no longer be slaves to sin, for the one who has died is freed from sin. One of the ways the Romans would torture people was bind them to a dead body. a living body. You ever been around something that's dead any length of time? And they would bind them, and the disease and the death would flow in them, and life would give way to death. We are crucified with him, in order that our body of sin might be done away, that it might die, so that we would no longer be slaves to sin, for the one who has died is freed from sin. Every Sunday before I go to preach, I go to the bathroom, and I look in the mirror, and I say, Dan, you stay here. I'll go preach, and I'll pick you up after. He doesn't matter for the while. Dead to self. I have been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ lives. Galatians 6:14, far be it from me to boast except in the cross of the Lord Jesus Christ, by which the world has been crucified to me. The world is dead to me. I tell you, dead. And I to the world. Watchman Nee writes this. You believe in the death of the Lord Jesus, and you believe in the death of the thieves with it. What about your own death? Your crucifixion is more intimate than theirs. They were crucified at the same time as the Lord, but on different crosses. Whereas you were crucified on the self-same cross as he. For you were in him when he died. What a different perspective. We're not the thief. We are present, crucified. And our crucifixion can never be made effective by our will or by our effort. You can't crucify yourself. It's impossible. But only by accepting what the Lord Jesus did on the cross. Paul uses that old-fashioned word, reckon. Travis, you got a nice definition for reckon?
Assume something that is someone else's upon another.
Absolutely. I love the old cowboy movies. I grew up with John Wayne and Roy Rogers and all those people. I love it. We were watching Roy Rogers one time, and there was a bad guy, and the cook came up with a shotgun. And she shoots him, slams him, and the sheriff goes, good job, Marge. I can't imagine that happening today. Like, good job, you shot the guy. But the cowboys would always say, how do you do? He said, I reckon. I reckon. I consider it to be true. Just like Travis said, I indeed reckon myself to be dead and alive. That Christ has taken into his actual body in the darkest shadow and the deepest evil, the bleakest suffering and the foulest sin, and in his bodily resurrection from the dead in real history, guarantees that what he bore fully on his very body, soul, and heart was for you and I. And that we can be raised from the dead. Born anew. He is the Lamb that was slain. This is the gospel. I know you guys are like, well, this is right. That's what we all said. This is the only way. The crucified life is the only path. A.B. Simpson, I got to quote the boy. By the way, when I was in college, we called him A. Bart Simpson. That was a reference. A.B. Simpson wrote this. We must surrender ourselves so utterly that we can never own ourselves again. We must hand over self and all its rights in an eternal covenant and give God the absolute right to own us, control us, and possess us forever. Surrender ourselves so utterly that we can never own ourselves again. I just bought a new bike, not new to me, and a missionary came and said, can I borrow it? I don't know you. He borrowed it, and I realized that I have an idol in my life that I had to deal with and still do to this day. We surrender ourselves utterly that we can never own ourselves again. The crucified life is in such contrast to the world that we live in. For beloved, we are living in a time when there is a great emphasis on power. And I want to be careful here, but this emphasis on power is not the cross-shaped way. This emphasis on signs and wonders, power for myself. I'm not talking about the glory of God and the witness and the testimony of the church, but the power of gain and greed. Preacher this week, he had to wait 10 hours for an airplane. Terrible. Now he wants a private jet, and he's asking his congregation to come up with $10 million to pay for it. Power. Isolation. Separation. Myron talked about secrecy. The dark hides our sins. Recently, a large church pastor filed and was granted a divorce in October. The congregation had no idea what was going on, and 2 months later, the members of the church were planning his 37th wedding anniversary. No one in his church knew he was divorced. How's that for isolation and separation? How horrible. A life of isolation will feed unfaithfulness. Terry Jackson and the Poppy family, what is it, Dave? Evil grows in cracks and holes and lives in people's minds, the darkest places. To be known in our weakness. Who knows you in your weakness? Not as weak or being forward, but who knows your weaknesses and who has seen you in that weak moment. About 4 months ago, I had an issue with, it's a long story, but I had a full-blown panic attack in the drugstore. I'm talking screaming, violent shaking out of control, yelling in pain. I had to hold my arm, and the guy came and held me, and they took me into a back room. That's being known in your weakness, and that's humiliating. And I couldn't look the people in the store in the eye, and then the pharmacist, Joe, who's a wonderful man, we talked about it, and he said, it's okay. They wrote me a nice letter, which I gave to my doctor. But to be known in your weakness can be really humiliating, but it's good to have people who know us in our weakness. I fear that in our quest for power, whether it's political or social or relational, we're losing the cross. We're seeking power. I asked a bunch of longer stories. Oh, I got too many stories that have too long a story. I asked a bunch of Mounties one time, when is the church at its best? And they said, when she's weak, not when she seeks power. We are losing the call to the crucified life. Elizabeth Elliot wrote, to be a follower of the crucified means sooner or later a personal encounter with the cross. And the way of the cross entails loss. The great symbol of Christianity means sacrifice, and no one calls himself a Christian can evade this stark fact. If you're going to call yourself a Christian, you must come to the cross. And I feel like an old man preaching the cross because that's all I can do. For I am a cross-shaped preacher because that's all I know. I am crucified with Christ. But far be it from me to boast except in the cross of our Lord Jesus Christ, by which the world has been crucified to me and I to the world. Paul in Galatians. Take away the cross, take away the crucified life, and you will have killed Christianity. And Jesus is just a nice guy with moral teachings. See, the cross is irreplaceable. So, let's move this along. Having bound our way to his life, this confession, admission, this moment of the cross, the faithless one, me, to the faithful one, him, my life lived in him and through him and him in me, Christ in me, living his life through me, my soul surrendered to his will, my weakness confessed, but then filled with his power. Now we can live out 1 Thessalonians 5. Until we come to the faithful one, dwelling in us, how do I remain faithful of my own strength when I know I'm not? Christ in me, the hope, the irreplaceable cross. All right, let's get to this last part. Travis covered this and the 16 commands. And Travis, I don't play volleyball. I don't know how to do that. It's a ping pong thing. I don't know, but you set it up, and thank you. Let's just revisit a tiny bit. It's 16 commands that we talked about. The first set is about faithfulness to the church. There's 3 commands that I've kind of broken it down to. Verse 12, recognize those who diligently labor among you. Verse 13, regard them very highly in love. I know when my church loves when they make fun of me. That is a sheer sign. I lost our chili eating contest. Came in dead last out of 13. It was great. And I was pleased with my loss because they ridiculed me in public. It was a wonderful, loving, cherishing moment in my life. But you know, if you love somebody, you're willing to do that. And it's a great moment. Regard them in love and live in peace. Preacher's favorite word. Let's unpack it. We're to regard our leaders very highly. This is one of Paul's super superlatives. Really high. Live in peace, that is bind nets, no division, called to maintain the peace between us. Every one of us has enough of our flesh in us. Any one of you could destroy your church tomorrow. I had a colleague I was talking to on the phone, and he was preaching, and a guy stood up in the back and started calling me a heretic. Started yelling at him in church. And I'm never coming back to this church again. He stormed out. Next week he came and did it all over again. Stood up. I don't know what was going on, but sure heart of the church. Every one of us has the ability to destroy our churches. Satan would have a field day if he could. It's only as empowered by the dwelling Spirit of Christ can we develop love and brokenness and forbearance and kindness and tenderheartedness and forgiveness that are indispensable for peace. I'm half Mennonite, which means I don't have a flag. Mennonites, we don't get a flag, do we? My mother's English. She was a raging Pentecostal. My father was a passive Mennonite. They got along. We ended up in the Alliance. It was perfect. This idea of being the people of peace, though, that's my Mennonite side. Going to war, that's my English side. We like to conquer worlds. This is the call to faithfulness, to be peacemakers. The second is faithful to the weak. 6 commands. Admonish the unruly, encourage the faint-hearted, help the weak, be patient with everyone. Don't repay evil for evil, seek good. And Travis expanded, and I don't need to, but let me touch a couple of phrases. To the unruly, rebellious. Remember, this is in context of leadership. To those who rebel against leadership, the word here is insubordinate or unsubmissive. We are to warn, to correct, to bring them and say, stop rebelling. I was in Bible school one time, came down the stairs, 18 years old, just full of vinegar. And this girl came to me and said, we're really feeling rebellious. What do you got? And she said, rebellion is of the sin of witchcraft. I said, oh, thanks for that. A lot of fun that was. Unruly, rebellious, correct. She was fulfilling her biblical mandate. To the faint-hearted and the weak, come alongside. You ever come alongside the weak? One time, I'm doing okay. Got a call from the hospital in Rosetown. Told this story in church a while back. They said a lady needs to see you. After church, no problem. Came up and got to the door. The nurse is there and she said, this woman just lost her baby. Her husband's 2.5 hours out. Can you sit with her? So I had from here to the drums to think about what to say. Her baby just died. Comfort the weak. We talked for 2 hours in the dark. Her husband came in, said, let you know your child has died, and prayed with them and then left. About a year and a half, 2 years later, she sent me an email and said, we're doing fine, but the crib's still empty. Help the weak. Encourage the faint-hearted. If you're going to live this life, God will call you to difficult places around kitchen tables, difficult places around broken homes. Got a call from a father one time. He said, my son is up to his eyeballs in porn. Walked into the office, the computer screen was scrolling. 15-year-old boy sitting in the corner weeping. And I said, welcome to manhood. Where do we start? Strengthen the weak. Be patient. See that no one repays evil for evil. Always seek what is good for one another. Do we seek what is good for one another? Sometimes good is correction. Sometimes good is comfort. Sometimes good is patience. But good for all people. So to the unruly, rebellious, and insubordinate, and unsubmissive, warn them. To the faint-hearted and weak, sit beside them. You don't have to say anything, by the way. Be long-tempered with everyone. My brother's right, and I know it to be true. All men are like steel. If they lose their temper, they're no good. Love doesn't give up or stop. It faithfully warns the rebels and cares for the weak. If Mennonites don't get a flag, neither do gentle people. We only give medals to the courageous. You ever got a medal for being gentle? Probably. Third, it's 8 commands to be faithful to the faith. Rejoice, pray, give thanks, don't quench the spirit, don't utterly reject prophecies, examine, hold firm, and abstain. We've looked at this, but again, we'll bounce through really quick. These are the life within and our relationship with God. He says, be happy in your faith at all times. That sounds shallow, doesn't it? It's not what he's saying. He says, rejoice. The word here means delight. Delight always. What do you delight in? It's a great word, isn't it? We delight always. I don't know what you delight in. I have all kinds of things that I delight in. But delight always. There's always a place for delight. Life is full of delight. Count it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials and temptations. Man, I don't know how to delight in my trials or my temptations. As Travis said, don't stop praying. Keep praying for that person. These 3 precepts of these verses are called the standing orders of the Christian church. Rejoice, pray, give thanks. And when it comes to the spiritual realm, this world in which we live, we are to have discernment, but not rejection. Hold firmly and abstain. In other words, are in the same sentence as the work of the Spirit and prophecies. We're to hold fast to the good work of the Spirit, because there's a lot of bad work of the Spirit going around, a lot of false things being said in the name of the Spirit. We are to test them, discern them, and hold fast to the good work, and abstain from every form of spiritual evil. If I got a nickel for every time I said your name today, Myron, I'd be doing much better. But these are things we've shared already. So avoid all unnecessary evil. Walk away, run away. As Paul tells Timothy, flee youthful lust. Guys, sometimes all you can do is run away. That's the only option you have. I was back in the 90s looking at a magazine rack. Because the motorcycle magazines are down here, right? And this little old saint lady comes by and says, what kind of magazine is that for a priest to be reading? I said, well, 2 things wrong. I'm not a priest, and secondly, it's just a bike magazine. But sometimes you've got to run away from the magazine rack that you have in your hand. Hold firmly and abstain. Hold fast to that which is the good work of the Spirit. Abstain from any spiritual evil. The abuse of the Spirit is rampant. And sometimes it feels safer just to discard it all rather than being discerning what is good. These are the 16 commands. Obedience, strength, patience, willful delight, unceasing prayer, gratitude, and discernment. All right, let's get this to land. Remember when you were like 9 or 10 and went to a birthday party? And you always got that take-home bag after? I love the take-home bag, right? There was a comic book and a Hot Wheel, and there was always a take-home bag. Every good sermon should be a 9-year-old birthday party. There should be a take-home bag when you're done. Like, oh, this is kind of how this works. So what's the take-home? How can we be faithful to our leaders? Through Jesus' faithful submission to his Father. Christ, who is faithful to his Father, works in us, and I submit to his will and his presence as I discern the work of the Spirit and truth, as I read the Word. I can then, as Christ submitted to his Father, I too submit. I have about 100 bosses. I'm not sure about you. But anybody at any given time in the church has the right to come into me and make correction in my life, right? We submit. Bernie's not here, so I can talk about Bernie, but I have a boss. We call him the bishop, but I don't think he likes that. I have a boss. Submission. How can I be faithful to the weak? Through Jesus' faithful compassion to the weak. How was Jesus faithful? Christ faithful to the most humble and the weak in me. Christ through me. How can I be faithful to praise and thanksgiving through Jesus' faithful life of prayer? I don't know about you, but there are many mornings I wake up singing. And I call those the Spirit just sings to me in the morning, and just singing, waking up, singing. Jesus' faithful song. Let me give you an aside. If you are struggling with obeying Christ, I'm not going to ask you to show of hands. If you're really struggling, how do I obey God? Sing. That's it. It's that simple. Because that's the command, right? Sing. So you're saying, I don't know how to follow Jesus. What should I do? Just sing. My father sang in the car. My father sang in the shower. My father sang at home. I sing a lot. Not well. And I sit in front of church in front of people who don't sing well, but we're not going to talk about that. Just sing. Sing while you're walking. Sing at home. Sing at work. What was the command? Sing. You want to struggle with obedience? Just start there. It's a great place to start. People might think you're wrong, but sing. God is not looking for extraordinary characters as his faithful instruments. Let me say it again. He is not looking for extraordinary characters as his faithful instruments. He is looking for humble instruments through whom he can be faithful. He's looking for you in humility to say, I will be faithful to Christ as Christ lives in me, dwells in me. This mystery that I cannot explain, and I wish the rational side of me could put it in ABC, but it is Christ, and I've just been focusing on this lately. Christ through me. Sitting on TV watching and saying, like, Jesus, what do you want to watch on TV tonight? Christ in me. He is looking for humble instruments through whom he can be faithful. If we would be faithful, we must surrender ourselves so utterly that we never can own ourselves again. I don't get to choose who I'm going to be nice to. I don't get to choose who I'm going to be patient with. I don't get to choose who I'm going to be kind to. That is not Dan's choice. That is Christ's choice, and I know who he's faithful to, and kind to, and gentle with, and loving with, and patient with, and giving his life for the least of them. I don't get to choose who I'm nice to. In Shaunavon, we had a guy named Ken. Ken was the best looking man in southwest Saskatchewan. He really was. I'm comfortable enough in who I am to say that he was a really good looking man. And I thought, well, if Ken's the best looking man in Saskatchewan, I'm going to be the nicest guy. Damn, the nicest guy in southwest Saskatchewan. God put up with that nonsense for 2 weeks and proved to me time and again, I can be a not nice person. Christ in me. I don't get to choose. Utterly surrendered, that we do not own ourselves. We must hand over self and all its rights to the eternal and give God the absolute right to own us, control us, and possess us. I don't mean possession, but we are slaves of righteousness. This is the hard way of the cross. This is not the way of power. Charles Spurgeon said this, let us go to Calvary to learn how we may be forgiven, and let us linger there so we may learn how to forgive. Let's go to Calvary so that we can learn how to be forgiven and stay with Christ so that we now know how to forgive. So we find ourselves trapped this afternoon. Commanded to be faithful in a world and a heart of unfaithfulness. But the good news, Jesus has set you free. I have come that you might have freedom. Not through self-effort. I cannot unbind myself. I tie up my dog every Sunday. He cannot unbind himself despite the power of his jaws. He is held by that much steel. Only I can unbind him, despite his power to kill me in a heartbeat. He's 120 pounds. Not through self-effort, not through willpower or willing strength, but through willing death. I am crucified with Christ. I go to the cross time and again, and there I find life. His life flowing through me. I am dead to faithlessness. How about you? I reckon myself dead to the novelties of life that distract me from true death. This week I was working on my sermon and I got frustrated. So what did I do? I went on Temu. I got $30. I bought a bunch of crap. My wife's getting some of it, my daughter's getting some of it, I'm getting the rest. I love Temu, stuff. I'm not dead to this novelty. I got my income tax return. There's this beautiful Ruger 1022 with a scope, and I was like, I'm not dead to novelty, but I'm working at it. I reckon myself dead to the novelties of this life that distract me from the true death. I want to be dead to the deceitfulness of riches that promises me power and pleasure. I want to be dead to my selfish nature that enslaves me to pride and makes me want to stand a little bit taller. I did a funeral for a guy in Nipawin, and this guy came up to me after church. He said, you Christians, you think you're better than us, don't you? And I said, yeah, we do, by about that much. It's true. Sometimes we think we're better than people. Oh, look at me, I'm not like that person. I do can't remember the step for AA, and I hear horrific stories of the sins that people have committed. And the danger is that I think I'm better than that guy. You did that to what, to whom, for how long, and how hard did you do it to her? It's easy for me to walk out of that room going, but the grace of God, go I. I want to be dead to my selfish nature that enslaves me, dead to the constant desire for more comfort over the strain of service. In the crucible, Giles Corey, as he's being killed, he's laying down and putting stones on him, slowly pressing him to death. And they say any last words, and Giles Corey cries out, more weight. More weight. I want to be dead to a heart that only wants comfort and is unwilling to commit to the strain of service. The old saint wrote this, O Lord, I am a shell full of dust, yet animated with an invisible soul and made anew by that unseen power of grace. Oh, I am no object of rare value or price, but one that has nothing and is nothing, given to Christ and born again. I am deeply convinced of the evil and misery of my state, of the vanity of my soul, but I am convinced of the sufficiency of Christ, and I know that I am deeply loved. To know that we are deeply, deeply loved. When you would guide me, I would control myself. When you would be king, I would rule myself. When I should love and honor and trust you, I serve myself. I fault and correct your laws to suit myself. So take away my roving eye, my curious ear, my greedy appetite, my heart. Show me that none of these things can heal my wounds. Take me to the cross and lead me there. I am surrendered to the faithfulness. I long for Christ's faithfulness to flow through me. I am far from perfect. I long for his peace in our church, his courage in my conflicts because I am a coward, his compassion for the weak when I don't have it, and his love for the lost when I'm frustrated. I long for the joy of his song in my soul, in my heart. Oh, if you could have heard yourself singing today, boys, I just stood 9 feet tall. The joy of song. I long for his endurance in my prayer and his wisdom in my own spiritual battles and in the battles of our church and our community. Men, I call you to the way of the cross today. To a faithful, steady obedience to the mission of Christ, and it's hard. Paul says, I let no one belittle me, for I bear on my body the scars of Christ. I was at a concert or at a church service, and I looked up and I said, there is not a scar on any of those guys up there. And I looked at our team, and I said, there are just scars everywhere. They have lived, they paid the price. Don't tell me your story, show me your scars. My generation skipped tattoos. We went straight to scars. Show me your scars. A long, difficult obedience. Eugene Peterson called it a long obedience in the same direction. He writes this, my feelings are important for many things. They are essential and valuable. They keep me aware of much that is true and real. I'm not going to diminish feelings at all. But they tell me next to nothing about God or my relationship. It's not based on how I feel. It's based on the truth of who Jesus is, that historical reality of the life, death, and resurrection. Beloved, we are pilgrims, not paramedics. It's not an emergency, and we leave them. No, this is a pilgrimage we follow down. The long road. It is easy. By the way, I'm on my last page. We're doing great. It is easy to think of Christianity as a Chinese buffet. I have buffet pants. I don't know about you, but I got buffet pants. They got stretches on the side. And I don't eat before I go. Because when it's buffet time, now we're serious, right? And you got to pace yourself. You got to do this right. A friend of mine, Jason, taught me how to eat at a buffet. And you take certain things, you eat that, and you wait a little bit, and you have some tea, and you have a little more, and you got to and eventually the buffet pants start to fill up, right? But then it's small portions. Christianity is not buffet. It's not quick little dab of this, a little bit of this, a little bit. No. You ever go to a southern Texas barbecue roast? 7 hours in the soil, or on the grill, not the grill, on the barbecue. You get the meat sweats just thinking about it, right? It's long, slow, and then you sit and it just falls. My wife's a cook, by the way. I know it doesn't look like it, but it just falls off the bone, and it's just magic, right? And it's been cooking for hours and hours, and that meat, and then it's just... Christianity is long, slow cook that produces beautiful fruit of righteousness. A life of slow transformation into the nature of Christ. Yes, it can happen in an instant. Those victories can occur in a heartbeat. But that heart has to keep beating. Faithfulness is not fulfilled through our will, but through the one who wills all things into being. Faithfulness. The call and the cost. The call is constant. The cost is the cross. Can I pray? Father, for these men, I pray that your Spirit would give them a new encounter, a fresh, perhaps, encounter with the cross. That they would leave this place not saying, yeah, I can do this, but I am crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life I now live, I live by faith in the one who loved me, who gave himself for me. And walking away fresh and renewed. I pray for a fresh filling of the Spirit upon each man here. A fresh renewal, a fresh conviction, a fresh empowerment of obedience and faithfulness. They would love all who come by their path. You call us to love our neighbor, love our enemies, and sometimes they're the same person. That we would love at great cost as you have loved us. Oh, Father, take us to the cross.